Everyone knows Star Wars changed everything in 1977, but here's what most people don't realize. The 1980s became Hollywood's most desperate decade of space opera copycats, as every studio scrambled to create their own galactic franchise that could capture lightning in a bottle twice. What followed was a parade of ambitious, expensive, and spectacularly misguided attempts to dethrone the Death Star. Movies that promised to be the next Star Wars, but instead became cautionary tales about chasing someone else's success. Some had bigger budgets than Lucas ever dreamed of. Others boasted A-list stars and legendary directors. And a few were so confident, they planned entire trilogies before the first film even hit theaters. Today we're counting down 10 space movies from the 1980s that tried to beat Star Wars, but failed gloriously. And trust me, number 3 was so catastrophically expensive, it nearly bankrupted one of Hollywood's biggest studios. Number 10, The Last Starfighter, 1984.
You have been recruited by the Star League to defend.
You think you know underdog space adventures? But this movie was so convinced it would launch a franchise, Universal had high hopes for sequels and merchandising. The premise was brilliant. A teenager playing arcade games discovers he's actually been recruited by aliens to pilot real starfighters. Universal saw potential for a franchise and marketed it heavily as a groundbreaking film, one that would showcase the future of computer graphics in cinema. The movie was charming, with impressive CGI effects for its time, created using Cray supercomputers. But despite positive reviews and a modest profit of around $28 million worldwide, it never achieved the blockbuster status Universal hoped for. The planned franchise expansion never materialized. The Last Starfighter learned that being technically innovative doesn't guarantee massive commercial success. But if you think overconfidence was bad, wait until you see what happened when a legendary director tried to create his own space epic. Number 9, Dune, 1984.
A beginning is a very delicate.
This wasn't just an attempt to beat Star Wars. It was supposed to be the thinking person's space opera, one that would make Lucas's fairy tale look like child's play. David Lynch was handed Frank Herbert's complex novel, and a substantial budget estimated between $40 and $45 million. The cast was impressive. Kyle MacLachlan, Sting, Patrick Stewart, Max von Sydow. Universal hoped they had a prestige sci-fi epic that could compete with Star Wars' success. But Lynch struggled to condense Herbert's dense novel into a coherent film, while also satisfying studio demands for commercial appeal. The result was a visually stunning, but narratively confusing film. Many theaters even provided glossaries to help audiences understand the complex terminology and plot. The film received mixed reviews and underperformed at the box office, earning about $30.9 million domestically. Lynch later expressed dissatisfaction with the final cut, feeling it didn't represent his vision. Dune proved that having prestigious source material and a bigger budget meant nothing if you couldn't tell a coherent story. But literary adaptations were nothing compared to what happened when studios created original space epics from scratch. Number 8, Krull, 1983.
Beyond our universe, there is a planet besieged by aliens.
Most Star Wars wannabes copied space battles and laser swords. This one threw medieval fantasy into a blender with sci-fi and hoped something magical would happen. The premise? Prince Colwyn must rescue his bride using a magical throwing star called the Glaive, aided by a band of outlaws fighting alien invaders. Columbia Pictures invested heavily in elaborate sets, costumes, and special effects, hoping to create the next big fantasy franchise. But audiences were confused by the genre-blending approach. Was it science fiction or fantasy? The movie couldn't decide what it wanted to be, and neither could viewers. Despite impressive practical effects and James Horner's rousing score, Krull disappeared from theaters quickly. The film that tried to combine the best of multiple genres had instead created something that satisfied fans of none of them. But genre confusion was nothing compared to what happened when a movie was so bad. It became legendary. Number 4, Enemy Mine, 1985.
marooned on a desolate planet.
Most space movies copied Star Wars action. This one attempted to create a deeper, more meaningful sci-fi experience, and nearly succeeded before studio interference destroyed everything. Wolfgang Peterson directed Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr. in elaborate alien makeup, as enemies stranded on a hostile planet, forced to cooperate to survive. The story was essentially a thoughtful character study about overcoming prejudice and finding common humanity. 20th Century Fox hoped they had a prestige sci-fi film that would elevate the genre beyond space battles and laser swords. The performances were strong, the themes meaningful, and the production values impressive. But test audiences found the philosophical approach too slow compared to the action-packed space adventures they expected. Fox demanded reshoots, additional action sequences, and a more conventional ending. Changes that undermined the story's emotional core. The movie that was supposed to prove sci-fi could be intelligent became a compromised mess that satisfied no one. Enemy Mine showed that sometimes the biggest enemy of ambitious filmmaking is the studio system itself. But studio interference was nothing compared to what happened when a movie was so expensive. It threatened to destroy an entire company. Number 3. The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, Across the Eighth Dimension, 1984.
4, 3.
You think you know weird space movies? But this film was so bizarre and so confident in its strangeness that it planned an entire franchise around a character most audiences couldn't even understand. Peter Weller played a neurosurgeon, physicist, race car driver, and rock star who battles interdimensional aliens called Red Lectroids, with his team of scientist-musicians, the Hong Kong Cavaliers. The movie featured an all-star cast: John Lithgow, Ellen Barkin, Jeff Goldblum, Christopher Lloyd. 20th Century Fox was somehow convinced this incomprehensible cult film would launch a major franchise. They even teased the next adventure in the end credits: Buckaroo Banzai against the World Crime League. But audiences had absolutely no idea what they were watching. The movie assumed viewers were already familiar with Buckaroo's world, referencing events that had never been shown, and characters who appeared without introduction. Critics were baffled, calling it aggressively weird. General audiences stayed away in droves. The planned franchise died immediately. The film that was supposed to outstrange Star Wars instead proved that sometimes being too original can be just as deadly as being too derivative. But weird cult films were nothing compared to what happened when productions became completely cursed. Number 2, Saturn III, 1980.
Of our solar system, suspended in orbit around the sixth.
This wasn't just a failed Star Wars competitor. It was a production plagued by problems that became a cautionary tale about troubled filmmaking. Kirk Douglas and Farrah Fawcett starred in what should have been a psychological thriller about scientists on a remote space station terrorized by a malfunctioning robot. But the film faced numerous production challenges: conflicts over creative direction, technical difficulties with the robot effects, and endless script revisions. Harvey Keitel appeared in the film, though his performance reportedly required post-production dubbing. By the time filming wrapped, nobody seemed to know what kind of movie they had made. Was it horror, thriller, science fiction? The final product attempted to be all three, and succeeded at none. Saturn III was poorly received by critics and audiences alike. It earned negative reviews, disappointing box office returns, and became a textbook example of how production problems can sabotage even well-intentioned projects. But production disasters were nothing compared to the ultimate 1980s space opera failure. Number 1, The Black Hole, 1979, released widely in 1980.
There is an inexorable force in the cosmos where time...
This wasn't just Disney's attempt to compete with Star Wars. It was their most expensive and ambitious sci-fi project of the era. Disney assembled a notable cast: Maximilian Schell, Anthony Perkins, Robert Forster, Ernest Borgnine. They invested heavily in special effects and production design, with a budget estimated around $20 to $26 million, making it one of Disney's most expensive films at the time. The film followed scientists who discover a massive ship on the edge of a black hole, commanded by a mysterious scientist. Disney aimed to create a more mature sci-fi film that could appeal to both families and adult audiences. They built groundbreaking special effects that combined traditional models with early computer graphics. The spaceship models were among the largest ever built for a film, and John Barry composed a sweeping orchestral score. But the film struggled with tonal inconsistencies. The first half was a contemplative sci-fi mystery, while the second half devolved into laser battles and robot fights. The ending, featuring surreal imagery of a journey through the black hole, confused many viewers expecting traditional Disney fare. The black hole earned about $35.8 million worldwide, which sounds decent, but given its budget and Disney's expectations, it was considered a disappointment. Most tragically, the black hole had all the elements of a great space epic: stunning visuals, compelling characters, innovative effects, but it couldn't figure out how to combine them into a coherent story. These 10 space movies didn't just fail to match Star Wars' success, they demonstrated how difficult it is to replicate a cultural phenomenon. Each had elements that could have made them successful: substantial budgets, talented casts, innovative effects, ambitious concepts. But they all faced the same challenge: competing with a film that had captured audiences' imaginations in a unique way. The 1980s saw countless attempts to create the next great space opera, with varying degrees of success and failure. These films remind us that while technical innovation and big budgets matter, they can't guarantee the lightning-in-a-bottle success that made Star Wars a cultural touchstone. But their failures teach us something important about creativity and innovation. True breakthrough success often comes from original vision, not from chasing existing formulas. Star Wars succeeded because it combined familiar elements in a fresh way, creating something that felt both nostalgic and revolutionary. These glorious failures remind us that in Hollywood, as in space, there's a fine line between reaching for the stars and crashing into the sun. Sometimes the most expensive lessons are the ones that teach us the most about the nature of creativity and ambition. Which of these glorious failures do you think came closest to capturing Star Wars magic? And what do their crashes tell us about the dangers of chasing someone else's dreams instead of pursuing your own? Let us know in the comments below. And if you loved this journey through Hollywood's space disasters, check out our video on the most expensive movie flops of the 1980s. You won't believe how much money studios lost chasing the next big thing. Well, that's it for today. Take care, and we'll see you on the next one.